Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Ray Lindley, Executive Director of Array Global Educational Services. And we're so excited again to bring you another workshop today to hopefully every time we come to you, there's just at least some little pearl of wisdom that helps you in your daily work or your work with schools. And we're reminding all the time that what we have is one of the most important jobs in the world, and that is we have the minds of young children in our care. And so these workshops are really intended to give you all of the background that we have, and we invite you again, if there are subjects that we have not covered and do not have on our schedule to cover, please let us know through your responses on Facebook, because we want this to be helpful and meaningful to you. So welcome, and I'll introduce our workshop presenters in just a moment, but my good partner and friend, Dr. Jacob Frankham, has a few announcements and things to say about coming events in Array Global Educational Services.
Good afternoon, mostly to everyone who's good evening. I'm Dr. Jacob Frankham. I'm the Associate Director for Array Global Educational Services, and we're so glad to have you on our workshop here tonight. We're excited to be offering these many different workshops for educators throughout the world, and we've received a lot of great feedback. And every time people fill out their survey at the end, we do look through those questions, and that really guides us on which workshops we want to do in the future. Next month, we actually have two different workshops. Our regular workshop, November 21st, the third Saturday of every month, we're keeping with that theme. Miss Jessica Leneve and Miss Gemma Liberty will be presenting on marketing your school during COVID-19. These are specific strategies that you can use later on after COVID-19, but a lot of schools have been talking to us. Since you're a private school, international schools, it's hard to keep those students focused and parents bringing their children to the school. So we have created this workshop specifically because of the feedback that we've received from you. And then also we've received so much feedback about, focusing on how we can best educate students virtually, because many of your students are not at school. They're doing distance-based program. So Dr. Ray and I are partnering with a great school out of Las Vegas, Nevada, which will be presenting on how to best instruct virtually. We will have teachers who teach science, language arts, music, mathematics, and they're going to give us some great strategies on how to best engage students and keep them learning during this COVID situation if you're doing a distance-based program. And we've done some workshops like that in the past, but we want to reiterate that as many of you have recently gone back to school or are going to become starting up school here pretty soon. So we're really excited about those different workshops. Also, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the services that we provide, and we're happy to help you in any way that we can. Our flagship programs that we offer are accreditation services, and we have had a lot of great interest in our accreditation. Again, we accredit international schools, national schools, K-12 schools, and we also do post-secondary vocational or career schools. And there's a big influx also of distance-based schools during this COVID situation, and we can also come in and accredit those schools. We also certify programs in your schools after you go through our accreditation process and you have something that is specialized in your school. For example, many schools like to have a STEM or now a STEAM approach: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. For STEM, for STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, we can come in and we can certify those programs and any other specialized programs that you have. And along with that, we have a great group of consultants, and Dr. Mike and Dr. Andy, who are going to be presenting, are one of our consultants. We have several of them that are not only present with us, but can work with schools at any phase that the school is in and any need that you do have. We also have a strong professional development program. This is just one area of our professional development program that we have. This is one of our free services that we provide, this monthly workshop. But our professional development program, we provide certification for teachers. There are many countries that don't require teachers to go through a formal process to be a certified educator, and we provide that for teachers. We also have a professional educators association, so teachers and administrators can get together regularly and discuss things. We also have awards and recognition program where we do a student of the month, an institution of the month, which we just named a great school in the United States as our institution of the month. Get onto our Facebook page and check it out. Also, we do teacher of the year, principal of the year, and things like that. Also, we want to really iterate our distance-based education program, our learning management system. We've partnered with a organization, Fayday International, who provides a great LMS program, and we'd love to talk to you more about that, especially during this time where a lot of education is happening through distance-based means. We also have an external assessment program that we offer, and it's a great opportunity for students and teachers to figure out where a student is at in their learning progress, and we can tailor make their learning for them specifically based upon their external assessment. Also, we have academic Olympiads coming up very soon. November 11th is when our academic Olympiads are. It's a small cost, and it's a great way to build relationships with other students across the world, other schools and students, other educators, and also just to compete and see how you do. But it's a fun way that has awards at the very end, and we're very excited to be able to offer those different services specifically so we can help every single school be successful and have some great opportunities for all their students. So Dr. Ray, I think I covered everything. Is there anything else?
Yeah, just one other thing in addition, Dr. Jake, you mentioned the workshop that we're going to be doing the extra workshop we're going to be doing with some subject-specific hints or help on how to do online education in specific subjects. But one that we probably get asked more than any other is primary, grades KG through 3. And we will have a teacher in that workshop who has specific experience in doing K through 3 instruction online. And we know that that's a big request. And so I just wanted to mention that will be part of that workshop also. We'll be getting the date out to you. It'll probably be the same week as our Saturday workshop, and we'll be getting the date out to you. In addition, we're going to be getting a video out on our Facebook page very soon about the academic Olympiads that Dr. Jake mentioned. But today I'm really excited to present two of our great consultants, Dr. Mike Poe and Dr. Andy Gover. I believe if your screen looks like mine, I think Dr. Andy is right next to me and Dr. Mike is the fourth one down. But I'll let them, I was going to introduce them, but they have a much better way of introducing themselves. So Dr. Mike and Dr. Andy, thank you. And I know that all of you will benefit greatly from their help today. It's yours, guys.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ray. I appreciate it very much. I'm going to take just a second to introduce myself, and then I'm going to share my screen and have Dr. Andy introduce himself at that point. I'm the Program Director for Educational Leadership at a local university here in the United States and have been there for 24 years and love working with teachers and administrators. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Andy, go right ahead.
Okay, and I'm Dr. Andy Gover. I just recently quit being a superintendent. I was a superintendent of a school district for the past 13 years, and now I oversee and work with all the administrators in the state of Idaho, and we oversee about 300,000 students. So during this COVID time, it's given us lots of opportunities to see some of the things that are working in education, some of the things maybe we're struggling with. And so today, Dr. Mike and I are going to talk about one of the biggest things that we're seeing around our state, and we're both from the state of Idaho, but we're really seeing that student engagement piece and trying to figure out how to get students motivated to excel online or in person, but just really getting them into that learning process. And so what we're going to talk about today is really looking at the best practices to get students engaged and try and help teachers and give them some tools to help with this. So the first question we want you to think about, and obviously we're not going to take time for everybody to answer, but what does student engagement look like to each of you? You know, what does it look like when you're in a classroom and you're face to face? And what does it look like when you're online like we are today, and you might only have one square of a student with, 30 or 40 students all looking back at you? How do you make sure that you can engage them? And again, there's no right answer, but if you just look at some of these words, then you can get some engagement. So, if you can get students motivated, if they're really interested in the content you're talking about, are they engaged? Meaning, are they actively participating? Are you asking questions and they're answering questions with deeper thought and not just simple answers? Are they paying attention? One of the things we're seeing a lot of is that students will sign on and then they'll blank their screen so there's no video, and find out that they're doing everything but paying attention to what we're doing. So making sure that they are paying attention, making sure you're requiring that the video is on and that you're paying attention to what they're doing. And then one of the big things we found, are they interested in what you're teaching? So whatever skill or whatever subject that you want them to learn, are you making it so it's interesting to them? And that's kind of a key thing. And then what kind of effort are they putting forth? What kind of assessment are you giving while you're online? And what kind of feedback are you receiving to make sure that they're putting back some effort? And on enthusiasm, one of the things we want to talk about is the enthusiasm works both ways. So while you want kids to be excited about what they're teaching, the teachers and the administrators need to be excited about what they're doing as well, especially in this COVID era, and you're online, because sometimes we're doing like we're doing today, we're talking to a computer screen, and we got to be able to show that we're interested in and we're eager to talk about the material that we're talking about. And then the last two, participation and involvement, is the same. Make sure you have activities that interact with your students.
So there really are two essential questions we have to think about. Do I have their attention? Are the students paying attention to me? Number one that will help with that is, do they think you care about them? Do they think that you have their best interest in mind? And if so, they're much more likely to pay attention. But then also the engagement. Too often what we see is teachers who will lecture online for 45 minutes and never have the students doing anything. And that's not student engagement. You may have their attention, but they're not engaged. And so being willing to break those lessons up into various sections and engage the students on a consistent basis, on a regular basis during the lesson, becomes very important. Now, there's several things that are out of your control. If the students are ill, or they haven't been getting enough rest, or there's problems in the home, or emotional kinds of issues. Are they eating well? Do they have support from the family? And a key one that we're finding all over the world, literally, is the strength of the internet connection. Do they have the kind of connection that they can actually listen to a video or participate in that? Or are you going to have to figure out how to present the material so that they can download it and look at it at a different time? But then also interest in the content area. You may find some students that have no interest in math, but there's ways that you can work through with them to bring them into that situation and help them out. But under your control is a place where all students can experience a lively, accepting, and positive environment. The idea that you're excited, you are truly excited about whatever it is that you're teaching. That will come through, whether it's on the screen, whether it's face-to-face, all of those kinds of things. That will build tremendously in terms of that.
And again, whether you're the student or whether you're the teacher, the kind of emotions and the kind of effort that you push forward Like when you first get on the screens and everybody gets on the screen with you, if you're excited and have a smile and you're just excited about what you're talking about, it really sets the tone for that classroom. You know, if you come on and you're like, man, this is one more thing I have to do online and kids aren't going to pay attention, they're going to be doing 10 other things. Again, that sets the stage for how your lesson's going to go. So we want you to think through as you get in there, what kind of emotions can you portray as you go on an online class? And whether that class is a 15-minute class or whether it's an hour and a half class, you have to be able to portray these different kind of emotions to get the engagements from students that you want. And again, be enthusiastic, be excited about what you're teaching about, you know, because when you're enthusiastic, that portrays through and kids pick up on it, you know, and then get them involved, get them interested in what it is you're talking about, you know, and let them have some enjoyment in it. Let them do different kinds of projects that will get them excited and see what those end goals are, and make sure you're very specific on what it is you're trying to teach them, so that when they do finish, they get the satisfaction of being successful and that they can have pride that they finished whatever the assignment was. You know, and again, these are just some words we've thrown out there and some emotions that will get people engaged in your classroom, will get them excited and want to come back and learn more.
Good. Dr. Andy, can I ask you a question? That's a great slide. When you're talking about getting them engaged in projects and so forth, I think in many cases, would you agree that many students don't know what they could do in a project? And so maybe the teachers could offer some suggestions on the things they might do that would be of their interest, and yet it would still meet the educational objective of that particular lesson.
And we would always say, have a great example that you can show kids of something they could do, you know, and give them the ability to look at what positive and good work looks like. And as long as you have that, kids can go a number of different directions. I think one of the fears is that they might go somewhere you don't want them to go. And so you have to make sure you outline what it is on the end goal, and then be willing enough to let those students go out and find what interests them and be able to tie it back to whatever the assignment is. But, you know, give them a little bit of leeway so that they are interested and they do get engaged in your lesson.
Yeah, and maybe it would help too if the teacher had some specific questions. Did this project help you understand whatever the subject is? Show how this project helped you understand the literature lesson that we're discussing today in class, something like that.
And we actually have some apps for them to take a look at today that will allow them to do that, and also in terms of using Google Docs. So yes, absolutely. And another key thing for teachers is the students should never know what is your least favorite thing you're teaching. It's all your favorite thing. So, but there's always things that are associated with lack of engagement that sometimes you don't have a lot of control over. Again, boredom or disinterest, frustration, anger, sadness, worry, anxiety, shame, self-blame. A lot of these things are things that are coming from their home. Sometimes they're coming because they're being bullied. Sometimes they're coming because right now, especially, they are alone. They're in their houses. Their parents are often gone. They're not meeting with their friends, and they are just motivation. And in the United States right now, we're having a huge problem with the emotional issues with our students that are at home long periods of time without being able to be involved with their friends. So maintaining a lively pace and keeping students' energy high. That's one of the things that I have to work with teachers here in the United States a lot about, is pacing, so that they are changing things up on a regular basis, keeping the energy high on the students and their own energy high. I'll guarantee you, if I'm talking for 40 minutes in a row, my enthusiasm by the end is not going to be very high. On the other hand, if it's shorter pieces, it'll work well. The positivity, that's one of the things that me personally is a huge piece. I want the students to know that I'm not only a positive person, but I am enthusiastic about their ability to do the work, and I'm regularly and willingly going to help them learn how to do things. And then also accepting things. For example, I had a lesson that I used in my university that was to make a work, working with parents. And I had several students who wanted to write a song rather than write out this newsletter. And I let them do that. And I had them perform it. So they were enthusiastic because they got to do something rather than just the norm. And accepting that students have different pieces of things that they like to do is really very, very important.
I just stop right there, Dr. Mike, just one quick thing. We have to help students understand they have freedom to give an answer, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And we can reinforce that student. I was observing a classroom once when I was principal, and the teacher was asking questions. I think I've shared this before, and having students raise their hands. And there was one little girl in the back who kept raising her hand on every question, and the teacher never asked her. And so after the class, I said to the teacher, "Why didn't you ever call on?" And I called her by name. She said, "Well, she always gives the wrong answer." I thought, oh, that's good. You know, let's at least let her feel ennobled or feel like she has value, even if the answer is wrong. And that's why when you pick that last point there about being accepted, we have to be accepted even when we are wrong.
Even in a face-to-face piece, one of the things that I've done is students that rarely get right answers, I would catch them before they would come into class, and I would tell them the question that I was going to ask them. And if they needed help finding the answer, we would do that. And then I would ask them their question so that they got it right, so that they had a sense of empowerment that I can do something. And it was amazing. The other students would go, "Oh, where'd they come up with that?" So yeah, that using the effective pacing, incorporating movement. And that's not just in face-to-face classes, but in our online classes. So that they are actually, you're having them go look at things or to do things and to write and to look up things. Well, that incorporates movement, the intensity and enthusiasm that you have. The use of humor. Now, humor varies in different countries. And so you have to decide what's humorous in your setting and what's not. And I certainly have no intention of trying to tell people what is humorous and what's not. But you know what is, and being able to use that humor is amazing. And then building that positive student-teacher and peer relationships so that they have somebody that they feel positive about that they can come and talk to. And again, there's ways, and we're going to show those here in a few minutes, about how to set that up through a Google Doc or whatever so that you can communicate personally with them and be able to truly build these positive relationships.
And these areas that we're talking about, they do work well in any type of atmosphere, whether you're online, whether you're face-to-face, whether you're in some kind of blended. The key is being consistent in how you push it out. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is pacing. And pacing is just how quickly or how slowly you go through something. But the key to pacing is make sure you have it laid out, right? Make sure you know I'm going to begin class at, whatever time, and I'm going to end it at whatever time. And then throughout that time, I'm going to be able to accomplish the goals and the tasks that I've set forth for this classroom. So if you have multiple things, let's say you're working, as on a group project, and then you want to transition to some lecture, and then you want to transition back to, some kind of a video or something like that. How does that work? Is it smooth, or because one of the problems we'll see is somebody will transition from lecturing as we're doing now into a video, and the video won't work, or they have to stop for 5 minutes to try and figure out what the problems are and why sometimes those things happen. A lot of times if we go through that prior to make sure that they all work, it just makes it a lot smoother transition, and we don't lose kids and students in that downtime between something like that happening. And obviously with the online world, again, depending on connectivity, some things like that are just bound to happen. and you know, sometimes it's your mic goes out, sometimes whatever it might be, and you just have to deal with those things. But the better we can be prepared and have those ideas in front of us, the better. And then make sure you have your activities set up prior to before you start, you know, and that means that if you're going to have them do some group work together, because you can still do group work online and have different groups work together, make sure you know what that looks like. Give them an outline of what it is that you expect them to do so that they know what they're doing and you can keep them on task. And again, that works in both settings. And then as you present new information, don't just throw it all out there in one go. I mean, if you throw everything out there in your first 15 minutes, you probably lost your kids after the first 5. So you got to chunk, we called it chunking, but that means you just give it in small pieces throughout that lesson. So at the end, you can give some assessments that allows you to find out, did they learn the knowledge that we're trying to teach them? But pace that throughout however long a time you have in that classroom so that you use the entire class period in an engaging way that keeps students active in your class.
And the key factor here is you have to plan. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants. You really have to plan out everything. You have to make sure that you know how things are going to last and that you stick to that plan. So let's take a look at an activity called 4 Corners. And in general, you have the students respond to a question by getting up and going to a designated corner of the room. And that's really easy when you're in a regular classroom. You can have one section over here with one question, another section over here, and you can either assign the students or they can pick their own corners. But if you're online, one of the things that you can do is use a program called Jamboard. And this is part of the Google Suite. And you can set up, here's one picture of corner 1, and you can either, like in this particular case, I assigned students, I just put fake names in there. And the question that is, what 2 or 3 things did you learn from the presentation on honeybees? So when you take a look at Jamboard, you have 4 different pages for the 4 different corners. Each corner has a separate question, and the students can literally, they can put in Jamboard, they can put in text boxes, they can put in pictures, they can put in these sticky notes, they can write if they're good enough with a stylus, they can do a variety of things, and then they can go back and take a look at the responses that each of them put in the various corners. So being able to engage students in a particular area and then allow them to see what else is going on is one of those things that quite often we need to be able to do when we're teaching online. Another example is a program called Padlet. And it's one that you have to subscribe to. There's a free version. This page that you see in front of you is actually a Padlet from a class that I participated in this summer. I scratched out the names, but you can put the question at the top here, and then the students respond with their piece, and then they can also respond to each other and give them a possibility of being able to share all this information, and you can see exactly what's going on. You can respond to each of those teachers as well. And in Padlet, they don't have the separate pages very well, but you can still do the 4 corners. Simply, you put corner 1, corner 2, 3, and 4, and then the students simply respond to the areas in which you want them to respond. So you really have the opportunity to use a couple of different programs to facilitate that student engagement and to keep them involved and active in what's going on.
Hey, Mike, can I jump in just a little bit?
Yeah.
About both of these programs? As a superintendent that works with students from grades preschool all the way up to grade 12, I've seen both of these programs work effectively all the way down to the primary grades and all the way up to grade 12. Because often I think when we talk about some of these things, we think, oh, these are only going to work for my junior high, maybe high school kids. but they're great to see some kindergarten kids get in there. They might not have the perfect spelling, but they can write something and interact with one another. I don't know if you've seen any of that, Mike or Andy, but it's great to see it with any grade level.
So one of the things that is very nice about Jamboard in particular is the students can actually search to put pictures down. So maybe like in a kindergarten or first grade, maybe they're not going to write very well, but they would be able to go out and find a picture that meets what they think the answer should be, and they can literally post the picture right there on the Jamboard. So yeah, I mean, literally these programs can be done early on. If kids can use tablets, and my grandkids started using tablets when they were like 3, so they can do it. I mean, it's a great opportunity for them.
And I think the other thing you find with both of these programs is the students learn how to use them. They learn to adapt them into multiple different scenarios. So not only as what you're trying to do in this particular example with 4 corners, they'll put it into all kinds of different English papers where, you know, they need comments on particular parts of their work and different things like that. So these programs are very adaptable. And again, as students learn them, it's amazing how quickly they go out and use them in lots of different things.
They'll use them better than the teachers, actually.
All right, so as we keep going on with building this engagement, again, one of the things is you have to be excited and you have to demonstrate your excitement over what you're teaching. And one of the best ways to do that is tell personal stories. You know, talk about those things that have affected you in some way, because then it has real meaning to those students. You know, I use an example with a lot of my students and staff about climbing mountains, right? And I do, I don't climb ridiculously hard mountains, but I climb a lot of mountains in Idaho that are over 12,000 peaks, and I video them and I take lots of pictures and I walk through that and I talk about at different levels. So when you get above 10,000 feet, for example, and the air starts to get a little harder to breathe. And then when you get up to 12,000 feet, you know, and it's cold, even though, you know, down low, it's 100 degrees outside. And I just talk about the difference of having to continue to go on and continue, you know, not to just give up and say, this is too hard. And I tie that to our everyday activities. When we have 25 students in class and 5 of them refuse to do anything, it's about not giving up, but finding a different way, you know, up the mountain, if you will. And so when you can tie your personal stories to that and tie it to what it is you're teaching, and it just makes it more personal, it makes it exciting for kids. And, you know, they remember those things and they tie whatever concept you're talking about to mountains in this example. I mean, I actually had an administrator just a couple of days ago ask me if I'd gone up a mountain this summer, and I hadn't seen this particular administrator in about 2 years. So, you know, those things stick. So use those personal stories. The other thing is your verbal and nonverbal signals. And this is really key, especially online, because if you're just going through the motions and you're just reading through an assignment and you're bored out of your mind, guess what? Your students are going to be the exact same way or worse. You've got to find ways, and again, put it in smaller pieces and be able to show through your body language that, you know what, this is exciting, this is important, and this is going to help you through. And that ties right in to your zest for teaching. And Mike, if you'll pull up the next slide.
You bet. Oops, went the wrong way. Sorry about that.
And this is actually a teacher from Idaho that Dr. Mike knows well. But you can see just on his face, he's excited about what he's doing. You know, he's got kids engaged, they're raising their hand, but you have to show through your body movement and through what you're saying that, hey, what I'm teaching you is exciting, right? I mean, I've sat in math classes that I get excited about, you know, and I don't have to use all my fingers, but I can figure out how to use different tools as we talk about things because the teacher has made it fun. And then I've been in those same math classes that, you know, you're having to drink caffeine just to get through it. So, you know, you really have to learn and really have to push out that atmosphere, especially when you're in an online setting, of excitement, and this is really something that's worth knowing.
Mike, what I find interesting about that picture is that he looks like a coach, but in the background, it's Romeo and Juliet, and he's trying to get high school boys engaged in it, which I can only imagine that is probably a little bit of a challenge. But you're right. Once he gets that excitement going and shows interest in it, and the boys see that he's interested in it, they're going to be interested in it too. Yeah, what a great example.
This particular teacher actually was the drama teacher for my son, Mr. Football Player, and he brought him in and got him involved in a play, and my son loved it. And this particular gentleman has incredible amounts of experiences other than just teaching. He's a woodworker. He hunts. He fishes. He does all kinds of things, and is able to use all of those experiences in terms of engaging his students. And so I was really glad that we were able to come up with this picture. Another thing is that the peer relationships are equally as important as teacher-student relationships. But there's a key thing here: do not be a bully and do not allow bullying. One of the things that too often as teachers, because we want to, maintain that distance from our students and so on, well, oftentimes because I told you to, that's why you have to do it. Well, that's being a bully. You need to be able to explain to them how this is going to benefit them, how it ties into their life, all of those kinds of things. And think about it. All of us teachers are significantly older than all of our students. We've had more life experiences. We should be willing to share those life experiences, but we certainly cannot allow the bullying, the kinds of things that, especially online now, that are just horrendous kinds of things happening.
And as we talk about, how teachers can foster this supportive relationships, one of the things I want you to think about relationships, when you're talking about our young students, think about the fact if they haven't been in class this year and it's all online, the way we really engage those young students is the relationship between the teacher and those young students. And so when they started this year and didn't get to come in and meet that teacher, there's already a gap there. So the importance of how we create this relationship, and even if it's online, and how we get this student to feel like they're accepted and like they're part of the class, and that like they know the teacher and that the teacher is very giving, it is crucial that we make those connections, especially with these little kids. Even in our state, in Idaho, we had some school districts that the teacher from the previous year moved up with those kids just to make sure that that relationship was already built, because we know it is that important for these young kids. So if you're a primary grade teacher, you need to really think about, how am I going to build that relationship with these students online and spend enough time with each of these students individually to get them back to where they feel safe and willing to take chances in my classroom. And so these are some of the things that we'll talk about, but, make sure you're treating everyone the same, right? Make sure it's equitable. Don't treat the boys different than the girls and the girls different than the boys. They both have equal access to education. Make sure you're treating them fairly. And then show interest in your students. You always have a few students that make your class really hard, whether they're class clown, whatever they are. You always have those students that really push your buttons sometime, but you have to figure out how to work with them and not give them the spotlight to take away from what you're teaching, but at the same time, figure out how to show them the interest so that they're included in your classroom. And then, always use positive things with your students. Try and learn something about your students, what they like to do, at the high school level in Idaho, for example. If teachers go to an activity, whether it's a play, whether it's a musical event, whether it's an athletic event, that means so much to students, and then when the next day, when the teacher says, hey, that song you sang last night was amazing, or that game you played last night, or just anything that you can use that's positive for those kids, is such a strong motivator. But it really shows that you as a teacher care about that student, and not just every student. They feel like, yes, that student really cares just about me. So that's really an important thing as you work with your students. Try and learn something about them, and if you can learn when their birthday is, that's awesome. But anything you can do to identify each student and be able to, at some point, just give them some positive feedback on whatever it is they do.
And Dr. Andy, let me say this too, because I really experienced this when I was principal. Very large high school. And in high schools, they have every sport for males, every sport for females, junior varsity, varsity, freshman. And if they saw the principal at their game, they were so excited. And it's the same thing with teachers. If teachers show an interest in something the students are interested in doing, that just helps to pull this together and say, you know what, this is an okay guy. He came to see my basketball game, and I know we can't do everything, but boy, if we can, with this slide that you have here, to show interest, that also, by the fact that you do this, it does show affection for the students.
Right. The other group of individuals that we often forget are the parents. Asking the parents, what are things that I should know about your student that will help me teach them better? What are kinds of things that they are interested in? And when parents hear teachers ask those kinds of questions, then they know that the teacher cares about their child, and the relationship between the teacher and the parents is significantly better as well. So let's go to some more examples here. A give one, get one, where you have the students get up and go to the space of their number. They number off 1 to 5, then they go to the different areas, they talk about what they've learned, and they bring it back. Well, again, that's very easy in a face-to-face setting, but one of the things that you can use is a Google Doc that you share with the class as a whole, so that the students then can go in and write in what their responses are. What are the things that you learned about honeybees during this unit? I use honeybees, for example, or all my examples through this program, because I understand how important honeybees are in terms of use of honey in lots of cultures. I love honey, and we're struggling with honeybees in the United States right now. So that's kind of the reason that I picked that particular one. But with this shared document, now the students can start to see what each other are learning. They can teach each other. It's not just me teaching as the instructor, but it's also the students teaching each other. And it creates engagement that's deeper and more long-term, and the classroom activities start to make connections with the real world. So you can do those kinds of things very easily with Google Docs, sharing different kinds of programs. It's just one of those things that works well.
And can I jump in right there for just a second? On that slide where it says engagement is deeper and more long-term than attention, that's one thing to really understand, because attention, we can demand attention just from being the teacher, right? Because what we say in this particular classroom, it's our classroom, and kids will give us their attention because that's what they have to do. But really getting that engagement from him it takes more work, and you want that engagement because then they want to be there and want to participate with you, not just give you their attention because they have to.
Thank you. And again, using the engagement to connect to their daily lives. What's their ambition? One of the things that you can do with Google Docs, you can actually set up a folder for each student that is shared with just you. And that there are students that can put information in there that they want you to know, but they may not want anybody else to know. And you'll be able to then tie things more directly into them. They'll know that, yes, I am reading that, especially when you respond to things that they have written in there. So being able, it takes some time, yes, but is it worth it to make those connections, to set up those individual folders where the students can write information for you specifically down? is truly a great opportunity for you to meet with students. And the idea of being able to, encourage personal projects. What a great opportunity for them to say, well, this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think about? What do you think about it? And you can respond without necessarily having to respond to the entire class or have the student be embarrassed because maybe it's something that they want to look up, but it's not necessarily what everybody else would want to. So that engagement becomes really important with that.
And this is a slide that just builds off of that to give you kind of an idea of how do I take a student's ambitions and their goals and put it into whatever project I want to work on. And so if you work with students and let them help choose, maybe you give them, an overall theme of what you want to accomplish, and then let them choose what they're going to write on, for example, or what they're going to create, or what kind of project they want to build, and have them ask these questions, how do I want to accomplish that? And then who else has accomplished this same goal? If you're a sports person and, you want to become the greatest soccer player, football player in the world, they're going to spend a ton of time at who's already accomplished that. They probably already know them, or know something about them. And so their interest is already peaked and it's already going. And so the more you can include these types of questions when you're assigning projects and when you're assigning different things to students, especially in an online setting, and getting them involved, there's lots of opportunities for students to be able to pull in their own likes and their own wants into learning new skills. It's just how you kind of put it all together. And these are just some questions you can do that with. And then at the end of that, you have them kind of self-assess and talk about, how am I doing with what I'm working on? And what have I learned about myself and about the material that I'm being taught? So they can self-assess at the end of that as well.
And Andy, can I just interject quickly there?
Please.
I thought that tied in so perfectly with what you were talking about as far as relationships. Because if you have a relationship, you're going to know what their ambitions and their personal projects they're going to be the most interested in. And I think that's perfect. I used to teach science before I was an administrator, and those relationships were so important as I tried to tailor fit those activities that I wanted my students to have. So I thought this is such an excellent kind of connection with those relationships and getting students engaged.
And this just goes on to talk about more ideas on how to make that happen and how to use that student's knowledge, and then things you ought to be looking at. What is the decision-making process, right? Is it all from the teacher, or does the student have some buy-in in how they're making decisions on what they're learning? Because if you just spoon feed students, meaning you're giving them all the answers, it doesn't stick in their long-term memory, for a long time. But if they're the ones having to make the decisions and having to work on finding an end goal, then that's going to stick a lot better. So as you look at some of these different things on just how to get this knowledge into kids, one of the biggest things is you got to provide choice. It can't just be one thing, because one size does not fit all. And we've seen this time and time and time again. You have to have different ways that students learn, because even with COVID, and what it's really brought out is that students are generally way more in tune with technology than the teachers are, or the administrators. And they already know how to get on and search whatever it is they're looking for, right? It's generally the teachers that are trying to play catch up in this thing. And so we've got to come up with different choices for how students are going to learn online, and give them the opportunities to do that, but then making sure we have it all laid out on, what kind of formats we're going to accept, whether it's out of a Google Doc, whether it's out of, Microsoft Office, and those kind of things. And then make sure we have those learning goals very well spelled out, so that students know them, so that parents know them, so that we know them. And then what's acceptable behavior. So those are the kind of things that we have to be able to do.
So there's all kinds of things in terms of strategies to enhance student self-efficacy and, their progress and feedback and so on, I'm kind of going to move ahead just a little bit. Effective feedback, every word from adults to students sends a message. Every time we say something, we're sending a message. And if we're sending, we send it verbally and we send it non-verbally. So it's important to take a look at those kinds of things. So here's a program that's called Quizzes. Even though the pictures look a little young, actually this one's better for probably junior high and high school. And if you can see, that there's directions on how to get started. You can create these quizzes. There's games that you can set up. And it also shows you what it's going to look like as you're playing as a student, as the students are playing. So it provides you the information and the opportunity to, again, to encourage those students, but also to keep track of what they're learning. One of the other things I like about quizzes is it actually has professional development already built into it for the teachers. For example, this one right here, it talks about teaching strategies. And it has a quiz that you go through and talks about teaching strategies. Here's one over here that works with you on how to do a flipped classroom. So a lot of these resources are already available. You don't have to make things up. You can simply utilize what's already there. The bottom one I show here is about mathematics, various kinds of quizzes and games and so on that you can utilize in math. There's English, there's social studies, and you can make up your own as well. Another one that works out very well in the game area is called Kahoot, and this is the main page. You can see how it works. You can create a Kahoot. You can host a Kahoot. You can use it as administrators. Kahoot is a great one to use in terms of professional development work with your teachers and being able to ask them questions. And the nice thing about it is there's a competition piece to it. So the faster you get the right answers, the higher up on the score you get. And once the students find that out, it's amazing how quickly they jump right into these Kahoots and want to be able to see what's going on. Another one that works out very well is called Nearpod. And again, there are amazing kinds of things that are already developed for the teachers. You can make up your own stuff, you can put in your own material, but there's also things in various languages, but also different subject matters so that you can utilize immediately things with students that have already been proven, that already work well. We're not going to, I would have loved to have been able to have you all download and do some interactive things with that, but it really doesn't work very well in this many people.
So when you look at feedback, this is just some research from one of the researchers, John Hattie, who's done a ton of educational work, but I'll just let you kind of read that. But feedback has some of the most positive effect on student learning and student achievement. Go ahead and go on the next, Mike.
Sure.
So what makes feedback effective? There are a few things. One, it has to be timely, right? You can't give an assignment and then make feedback on it 3 weeks after it's due. You know, you need to be able to tell a student, man, you did a really good job on this particular piece of this assignment, or you need to, you know, change a little bit on this one to make it better, but it needs to be timely. The other thing is it needs to be very specific and clear. If you're talking about addition in mathematics, then make sure you're specific on what your target goal was, and that's what the feedback's tied to. Don't tie it to something outside of what your goals are. And then again, when you're correcting students, don't just tell them, hey, you did this wrong. Ask them, you know, in this particular case, how could you maybe done it different? Or could there be a different answer than what you did? But give them so that they're having to think through, what did I do wrong? And then foster a growth mindset. Hey, you've done amazing at this and you continue to even get better, and give them that feedback that allows them to move forward.
Nice thing about Kahoot too, and I've said this before, so many times in schools, we of course want to limit students' iPhones and so forth, but this allows them to use it properly. And I think rather than saying no iPhones, let's teach them how to use them correctly. And our time's almost up here, so we'll move along. But there's some really advantages to something like Kahoot, because students because they love their iPhones and their pads and so forth.
So you all will have copies of the slideshow so you can look through different things. But one of the things that I'd like you to take a look at, and I'm just moving through here, is actually a homework assignment that we have for you. Not that we're going to grade it, but there's a TED Talk by Rita Pearson, and we have the link. And I'd like to have you and a fellow educator listen to it, and then ask the questions. How do you feel watching it? Those kinds of situations. So we are coming down to the end. Our information, again, our email addresses are at the first of the PowerPoint. Any questions you've got, we'd be happy to answer those by email. So Ray, we'll turn it back over to you. Ray and Jacob, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andy and Dr. Mike. I just have really enjoyed seeing the comments coming across the chat box. And I think these comments are very indicative of the fact that I'm echoing here. Very indicative of the fact that people really enjoy these. We're presenting these to you from Array Global, and we're really thrilled that we can be presenting these to you. If you have considered accrediting your school with Array Global, we would definitely be honored to work with you. We're already receiving wonderful responses, and we would just like to include you. I'd like to include with a challenge for all of you. And this is not an easy challenge, I promise you. But one of the things that I think our students know, because Dr. Andy and Dr. Mike talked about, they need to know we're human, that we really are human beings. We're not just teachers standing in front of the class. And I want to read to you something that I found that I think is really worth all of us who are in the education business to consider. And I challenge you to consider this. To our students, I promise to care about you. I promise to be patient with you. I promise to help you when you are struggling. I promise to enjoy teaching you. I promise to be trustworthy. I promise to believe in you. I promise to make learning interesting, fun, and meaningful. I promise that I will challenge you to be your very best. I promise to do everything I can to help you succeed. I promise that no matter what, I will never give up on you. And here's my challenge to you, teachers, administrators, whatever is your position in the school. I challenge you, and by the way, this is available on our website, on our Facebook page. I challenge you to consider this. What would happen if you printed out these promises and you put them on the wall of your classroom, and the students see this every day? It's going to help you zero in on what's important, and it's going to help your students say, my teacher really does care about me. And I just end with this, because I read this and I thought, well, that's really true. You might be the only reason a student comes to school today. Think about that. Your importance. You might be the only reason a student comes to school every day. Wow. Does that make us feel responsible? I hope so, because we have these precious lives in our hands. Dr. Andy and Dr. Mike, thank you so much for this outstanding presentation. All of these slides and so forth are on our Facebook page. They'll be on available to you. Print them out, use them, share them with other teachers who couldn't be here today. Of course, we're interested in working with you in your accreditation and other issues from Array Global. But more important than that, we're interested in giving whatever information or help we can to help us all do a better job. So thank you all for attending today. It's been a great session, and look for us twice in November, once for sure on the third Saturday, and we will let you know when we schedule the workshop specific to teaching these subjects. So Dr. Jake, thank you. Dr. Andy, Dr. Mike, Dr. Jake, anything else that I've missed?
Just that I will be sending out an email to all the participants so they can fill out the survey. The survey has been posted in the chat box and on Facebook. So make sure you fill that out. And then again, just echoing what Dr. Ray said, if there's any way that we can help you out, especially during this time, please let us know. We're really here to help you out. This is what our goal and our mission is to influence and affect as many people as we can and really change the world as much as we can. So thank you again for participating, and thank you, Dr. Mike and Dr. Andy. It was great to hear your presentation. It makes me want to go back on Monday to my school much more invigorated and excited to help my students out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.